John TheMorgile here, checking in live from South Kakalaka for you. Hope y'all are having a great Thanksgiving weekend. Give us a big old thumbs up there if you can hear me well. And I will try to get this thing started here in just a moment. Hope y'all are having a blessed day. And again, let me see them thumbs. Let me see them thumbs. If you can hear me and see me where you're sitting, I'd appreciate it. Got a few things to talk about today. Mainly, it's going to go towards what the hell is going on with this Elon Musk character, right? Leave this guy alone, turn your back on him for 5 minutes, and he just falls apart pretty spectacularly, right? So I think if y'all hadn't realized it, let's put it this way. Elon Musk is probably the last billionaire anybody would want to be right about now. Basically, the three main companies that I guess you could say he's famous for. Musk definitely being one of the, I guess you could argue the most famous CEO or one of the most famous CEOs. But he's famous for what? PayPal, SpaceX, and Tesla, right? So unless I'm forgetting anything, but definitely those three at the very least, right? SpaceX, Tesla, and PayPal. And what led me to even start looking at Elon Musk anymore, because I do spend a great deal of energy trying to not think about Elon Musk, right? Considering how he's always in the news and always in the SpaceX space news and that sort of thing. So he is definitely everywhere. But did y'all know that he did Saturday Night Live about 2 years ago? And I didn't know this until just the other day. And Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live was probably the cringiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And since that point, it's arguable that these companies that he's so famously in charge of have just really hit the shit tank, as far as I can tell, since that moment in time. Excuse the French there. Yeah, the Roach, Saturday Night Live. Yeah, it was bad, man. So, on his monologue, he actually brings his mother out on stage in the middle of his monologue, and he admitted to having Asperger's during his monologue on Saturday Night Live, which I guess probably that's common knowledge. I'm sure everybody already knew that he had Asperger's, right? But I didn't know that. And nothing against, no offense to people with Asperger's. I believe that they're victims of chemical attack that is like fluoride and things like that in the water, and the vaccines as well. But humiliation ritual, it was humiliating, but I don't think so. I think that he fully intended to be funny. He tried to do literally stand up during his monologue. What's up, Calm Water? Sorry. But it was pretty bad, man. But so if you look at, and I'm not really one to follow the stock markets, and I'm no expert, so maybe I'll stand to be corrected on these. But since that point in time, Tesla, so in November of 2021, was at $409, which was a few months after the Saturday Night Live thing, right? But since then, Tesla's stock has gone from $409 per share down to $238 a share, which is a huge loss as far as I can tell. It lost I mean, not quite 50% of its value, but I guess what is that, about 30 something, 33% of its value? No, I don't think it's that much, but a good chunk of it since then. And it's not just SpaceX either. PayPal as well went down from $308 per share down to 55. So PayPal definitely lost their ass since 2021. And then, of course, SpaceX isn't a publicly traded company, which that was the important thing that I even wanted to start talking about their stock market stuff, right? Because I'm not really into that much. But I was just interested to see, what happened to the stock prices of these companies that Elon runs after the Saturday Night Live thing, because it was so bad. It was terrible. And of course, quite clearly, the stocks on PayPal and Tesla have plummeted since then. So that's not a big surprise. But like in the case of SpaceX, the reason that that's important, the fact that it's not publicly traded, and by the way, the shares on SpaceX are $81 per share, but you have to go through like a special private pre-IPO secondary market. So it's like privately traded, I guess, but not publicly traded on like the stock exchanges. And the reason that that's interesting to me is because a publicly owned company, they would have to, like show their books or whatever. They'd have to show everything to the publicly run like board of directors and the shareholders, like the primary shareholders. And so because of the fact that they're privately traded, it seems to me that, to me, it makes perfect sense, because I'm fairly well aware that anything to do with space and NASA is like money laundering, right? So like really when it comes to space, the more rockets that they blow up and stuff like that, the better off they're doing. Because of course, the point of a money laundering operation is to, make dollars disappear, right? And what better way to make dollars disappear than to, fill a rocket with an expensive payload that doesn't actually exist and then destroy the rocket, which is probably just like a shell or whatever, right? So, and the electric car thing, I'm kind of paying attention to the chat here. Here's something that I don't understand, and I'm certainly no electrical engineer, but the electric cars today that are so famously not fully automated in terms of self-driving, they kind of suck, because you've got to plug them in order to keep them going. So you're still basically bound to the electric grid, like paying these rich, faceless corporations for the energy that we need to like survive in this world, right? But so let me run something by y'all, because it would make a lot of sense to me. So, okay, so like Teslas and other electric cars, because there are other electric cars out there. Tesla isn't the only one that's doing it. And in fact, there's been companies making electric cars for decades, so it's nothing new, right? But they run on batteries, right? And so why couldn't we do this? Why couldn't we, and I'm getting this patented, so patent pending on this, instead of having to plug in the car into the wall and pay the power company to recharge it, or pay Elon Musk to recharge it, right? Because one of the few things that Elon actually patented on the cars was the charging port. So Elon Musk gets a nickel every time someone charges their Tesla or other car that uses that port, right? I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Royalties on, inventions, but I'm sure he's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart. But instead of doing that, what I don't understand is, okay, if you can generate electricity by rotating a magnet within a coil, or rotating a coil around a magnet, why couldn't we set up something in the axles, either one or both of the axles, where you basically got like a coil in the housing for the axle and then some sort of a magnet, one or the other, spinning to generate electricity to charge the battery on the fly while you're going. I don't understand why something like that isn't possible. I would imagine that it is entirely possible to do something along those lines without having to, pay to recharge the battery. But I think that that sort of like perpetual energy or whatever is highly frowned upon by the oligarchs and the spiritual wickedness in high places that are running the show here. So if something's gonna be bad for their profit margin, then they'll chop off everyone's heads to prevent it, right? Because we know, energy and pollution. Let's say pollution because of cars is a big one. And if you were to just automatically, like practically overnight, cut out all of the that waste for the greenhouse gases from cars, that would be huge. But then it would ruin the coal and the oil industry or whatever. It would ruin people like Elon Musk as well, because he wouldn't get his nickel every time you plug in. So that's just me spitballing. And any electrical engineers out there, feel free to patent something like that. I'd be surprised if I was the first person to think of that. So more than likely what will happen with that sort of thing is there's already patents on it. And some big company like, say, GM or GE or somebody like that would own the patent hypothetically and just prevent anyone from using it. Which is why, capitalism as a system, in theory, it sort of works, but then it always ends up as a catastrophic failure, because at the end of it, profit becomes more important than anything and everything. And so when profit's the most important thing to these very large faceless corporations that are not actually human beings, but are considered as sort of like persons or people according to the law. And so it's a very convoluted thing to where basically you've got these faceless large corporations poisoning the world, poisoning our inheritance, if you will, for profit, for immediate profit for themselves, while at the same time basically selling us and selling our grandkids down shit river. And they're perfectly fine with it, of course, because, well, a corporation can't technically have a conscience. Just like a corporation can't technically be put in prison for like doing illegal things, right? And so, what can you do, right? But so Elon Musk, man. And, I got to really, what led me on this track was the whole fact that, one of SpaceX's recent rocket launches was a huge catastrophic failure. They claimed that it made it just up to space and then exploded. And the whole thing was a total loss, right? That's what they're claiming. And how did they phrase it? They used a really nice and cutesy euphemism, like spontaneous, unplanned disassembly or something like that. But of course, like that, it wasn't covered in any of the domestic news for whatever reason. It was totally basically the only place that I found it was from overseas news, like Hindu news or something like that. And even today, like if you search for NASA news, you don't find anything about the recent catastrophic failure of SpaceX losing another one of their rockets. What's up, Templar Knight of Reality? Appreciate that. But so, it makes you think. It makes you think about like these billionaires like Elon Musk. A lot of people are super jealous of him. I'm not jealous of the man at all, because clearly, like, he's not all there mentally, which, again, nothing against people with Asperger's. I believe they're victims of basically chemical attacks that have been imposed on us since we were little, like even in the womb. I mean, even things like just plastics, I think, are very bad for DNA and stuff like that. But that's like way beyond the scope of this conversation. But I see people that have these sort of mental disorders or whatever it's classified as victims, and it's certainly nothing funny. It's nothing to laugh at, and I feel sorry for anybody that has that sort of thing going on up there. But then, of course, people with Asperger's syndrome, they're not like retarded or anything. They're just wired a little bit differently, and so they'll be very much like socially awkward, probably don't register certain emotions the same way as people tend to do normally. And who's to say what is normal, right? But there's definitely, when it comes to people with like severe spectrum of that Asperger's, there's no other way to put it, but they're not exactly all there, right? They're not firing on all cylinders. And as sad as that is, it's like it actually, to me, it explains a lot about Elon and why he is so sort of socially awkward. And one of the things that really stuck with me, because I didn't have much of an opinion on Elon at all until getting into the whole flurfer movement and really seeing him on podcasts like Joe Rogan trying to be like, like Mr. Cool and had the eccentric billionaire with all the answers who could never be wrong because he's rich, right? Because like we all know rich people could never be wrong, could they? Absolutely not, because the more money that you have, obviously, the smarter of a person you are and the better of a person you are and the wiser of a person too. So, dollars are the most important metric of a person's character and intellect and all those metrics, right? For sure. Everybody knows that. But really, though, but not really, And, I personally feel bad for the guy just because, well, again, he's lost his ass. And I think it's because a lot of it has to do with that Saturday Night Live thing, honestly. People got to see a side of him so wait a minute, so this guy isn't actually the real life version of Tony Stark. And he's just a regular kind of goofy dude that is actually quite stupid in many areas. Like, sure, he may be a genius on certain things. We've all got our qualities, but then on other levels, he's also stupid as hell too, and makes a lot of bad decisions and is not necessarily the best person to be making permanent decisions that are going to affect society in general for generations to come, I think. He takes credit for a lot of things. So like in one of the last streams I did, I mentioned that it's possible that Elon Musk doesn't even really know that space is fake, that space is a scam. And I still believe that there's a chance that he's not necessarily in on it, right? And I got back some shade from people saying things like, well, he launches rockets and he has to know, right? Because anybody who launches rockets would necessarily know that what's going on. But my point would be, excuse me on that, my point would be that Elon Musk has never launched a damn thing, okay? Except for arguably PayPal. Like maybe you could argue that he launched PayPal, but he certainly isn't launching rockets. I'm pretty sure the only time he's ever picked up a kitchen sink is when he did it for that photo op thing, right? He's not actually launching rockets in the same sense that, like, you know, these ancient kings weren't actually building pyramids or whatever. They just take credit for it because they're the ones that stamped their name on the cornerstone or whatever. So they did it, right? So yeah, Earthship Bear, he didn't even launch PayPal, right? So anyone arguing that Elon Musk is this, you know, mastermind genius. Oh, and just bouncing back something. So I had mentioned that he was on the Joe Rogan show, and something that rubbed me the wrong way about Musk was the fact that he was talking about Tesla, you know, because he's the CEO of Tesla or whatever. But he was talking about how he admired Thomas Edison more than he admired someone like Tesla. Because because Edison was the better businessman or whatever. And that says a lot about a person, especially a person that happens to run a company called Tesla, which by the way, they don't really use any of the sorts of technologies that I think Tesla would be proud of. I think that they're just using his name and sort of commandeering on the existing name, right? Because the stuff that Tesla was about, he was about the 0 point energy, if you will, the naturally created sort of infinite, abundant, free energy that is just all around us at all times, right? Tapping into that, you don't need that's the sort of batteries, but okay, given these batteries, I just think that there could be ways that they could be, you know, better, more ecologically friendly powered, and I just feel like the secular systems that are in place that are set up to, you know, monetize on the burning of these fuels and monetize basically the wholesale destruction of our environment, the poisoning of our inheritance. They have the laws in like the status quo set up in their favor to where they're not going to allow those sorts of changes. And so, you know, I don't think Elon Musk is some big mastermind genius. Sure, he's a rich dude who made some savvy investments, but he's not inventing anything. He's not gonna. I don't think he could genius his way out of a wet paper sack. Honestly, I think that is a persona that he's leaned into and probably believes. But he's just a regular guy that indeed has a lot of money. It probably does help when your father is an emerald, you know, owns emerald mines or partially owns emerald mines. It doesn't hurt. So anyway, not to just sit here and dog on the guy, but I wouldn't want to be him, honestly. Elon is Illuminati, you say, the Roach. I don't know, man. Aren't those guys supposed to be like wicked smat? I don't know. I just don't see it with him. I really don't. I see him as somebody that's drank his own damn Kool-Aid and has too many yes men around him to realize when he's making a fool of himself and ruining his company, plural, for all of the shareholders, right? And, you know, what I wanted to sort of segue into another sort of segment of this, because I just want to get a few things off my chest about basically the decline of America, which is what we're certainly experiencing. For people to say things like just go get a job, which, you know, I do work, believe it or not. So much has changed in my lifetime. So I'm 42 years old now, and I've done a lot of different types of work in my life, everything from like telemarketing to construction to graphic design. So I've done physical manual labor, and I've also done like office clerical type work, as well as owned my own business doing freelance office, clerical, graphic design type work. And over the last 20 years, man, things have changed so much, so fast. It's quite difficult to even encapsulate all the change just in that sector of like the workforce, right? So because of certain trade deals like NAFTA and CAFTA, the United States companies that used to be, good places to work for American people, they all started shipping their manufacturing facilities overseas to quote unquote third world countries in order to produce the products that the world buys and American people buy for cheaper labor. So, they've been exporting our jobs. They took our jobs. They've been doing that for a long time. I mean, look at cities like Detroit. You'd really look no further than Detroit to see the detrimental effects that these sort of trade deals have on American people. But it's not just the manufacturing either. That's one field that I've personally never worked in, is like manufacturing, but I know people that do, and I've seen the effects that has. But what affected me more by those same sorts of trade deals was the outsourcing of professional jobs even. And with the release and the exponential growth and implementation of the internet worldwide, it became possible, with DARPA's the internet going worldwide, to basically ship over our office and clerical jobs overseas as well. So like in the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s, when I was doing office work for myself, selling my services through a company called Elance, we were in heavy competition with overseas companies from like Southeast Asia that would they could afford to charge like $1 or $2 per hour on projects that I was bidding on. And some companies do want US native speakers only to do their sales and customer service, but some companies just really only want the cheapest bid. And it's you'll run into them all the time. I mean, even big companies like AT&T and other multinational corporations, they'll outsource their customer service and sales to overseas, so-called third world countries, where they can get away with paying these people peanuts. And it's all thanks to these lucrative trade deals that started going into place, within the last few decades. And they really have been detrimental to jobs in multiple arenas. And let's not forget, demonetize me for this if you want, but let's not forget the illegal immigrants situation either, because that doesn't really affect a lot of types of people. But when you work in the manual labor markets, if you're involved in that sort of thing, so like construction or agriculture or landscaping, you're going to find a market that is dominated by, and I don't know if it is so much anymore. I really haven't been in that sort of workforce at higher levels, at least not all over the country recently in the last few years. But if it's as bad as it has been historically, as I can attest to personally, all over the country, it's a huge problem where the majority, and frankly, I don't even understand how they're able to do it. Like, good luck going and getting a job without an ID and a social security card. Good luck getting an ID and a social security card if you're not a citizen. Like, I don't understand how they're able to do it, but they do it. And so there's that as well. And personally, I don't have anything against illegal immigrants. I love the Vatos. I love the Mexicans. Nothing against them. I get along with them swimmingly. In fact, I admire their culture in a lot of ways. And there's personally nothing I can do about the immigration problems, the illegal immigration problems. But I can tell you that all of these factors, whether it's the exporting of our manufacturing jobs overseas, the exporting of our professional clerical sales design jobs, which, by the way, design's another huge one, which is, so backing up the wagon a little bit, when I started my Elance business, which ended up becoming the #1 Elance contractor in the category of sales and marketing for quite a while, until Elance was no longer a thing. But when I started that business, I wanted to do it strictly for graphic design, because that's what I enjoy doing design way more than I would enjoy doing something like sales and marketing, right? But the thing is, in the graphic design category, there was just no competing. You couldn't compete with people that are willing to do the same thing for like $1 or like $10. You're thinking of putting in a bid for $500 on a project, or say $300 on a project, and you've got people that are putting in bids for $10. Like, you just can't compete. And the thing is, when you're dealing with things like graphic design, there really is no sort of perks for being a native English speaker when you're talking about graphic design. I mean, I guess it might help for describing what you want for your project or whatever, but it's not like they're going to be dealing with your customers or something like that, as it is with sales and marketing. So I was able to find a niche in sales and marketing much easier, but even that has gotten, it's just that the markets are flooded with overseas competition that is very difficult to compete with. So it is possible to compete. So it's not quite as bad as like the auto manufacturing moving overseas, where like you've literally got to move to China or something if you want to work in that industry anymore, right? So it's not quite that bleak, but it's almost just as bad, because you just can't compete with somebody willing to work for $1 or $2 an hour. I was watching something the other day, and the guy was making a point that there's a company that outsources their manufacturing to Kenya, and it's not even manufacturing. It's like some office clerical type work, and paying the Kenyan natives $2 an hour. And it's like, poor Kenyans, they're only paying them $2 an hour, but like if you compare the foreign exchange rate on the Kenyan denari or whatever it is, shilling, I think, Kenyan shilling, it's like 0.006 shillings to the US dollar. So on average, Kenyans earn like $5,000 a year. So $2 an hour is perfectly, that's decent money for somebody that lives in Kenya for doing, it's not like hard or dangerous work. It's not like they're diamond mining or something, right? But what about poor Americans? Because all these jobs that used to be done by Americans are just gone. They're evaporated. They don't exist anymore. Very rarely will you find domestic jobs for doing a lot of the things that, sales, customer service, it's very few and far between. It's not like it used to. Not like it used to be. And that's working for a brick and mortar office or working for yourself, like freelance or whatever. It is not like it used to be, for sure. And so when you add into the mix of that, which has been going on since like what, the 80s, so like 40 years, something like that. When you add into the mix of that AI, which is going to be the next big thing that sort of shatters the job markets in the next 3 to 5 years, I would say, artificial intelligence is just going to be, in my opinion, devastating. Calm Guadalupe Delazio says the Filipinos in Ireland are all sweet people, mainly working in nursing. Family is everything there to them. Yeah, it's great people. Nothing against the people. Love them to death. Like I get along great with immigrants, regardless of what race or whatever language they speak. Doesn't matter to me. I don't have anything against them, but it's also a fact that the jobs that used to be filled by Americans are now we're in competition with people that are willing to work for basically peanuts. And furthermore, the contractors that hire illegal immigrants don't have to worry about like unemployment insurance or disability. Like if they get hurt on the job, they basically don't have any recourse. I mean, I guess they'll go to the emergency room or whatever, but it's not like the companies have them on their insurance. You know what I mean? So they're getting screwed. I mean, I don't claim to have any sort of solutions or answers to these. I'm just saying that America is in decline because of these factors. I mean, forget about the fact that we've got this runaway inflation, which has basically stolen the value of the dollar, like 95+% since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was initiated, right? So their stated purpose, their corporate charter, was to prevent inflation. And of course, what happened right after they took control of the U.S. money supply was, the Great Depression happened, and then the runaway inflation of our currency, to the point where it's not even worth a nick of what it used to be. So the non-federal, non-reserve is at best an utter failure, and is at worst a domestic enemy that has been stealing our wealth out from under our noses for over 100 years. Them's fighting words as far as I can tell. But can you imagine when AI starts replacing even the few jobs that we have left here domestically in design and sales and marketing, or you name it? Like AI is set to have the capability or the possibility of replacing just all sorts of jobs, man. I think it's going to get pretty damn ugly. And so what the hell are we going to do, man? You better have AI skills, I guess. I noticed that MIT has some courses. I was thinking about seeing if I could get like they do federal grants for going back to school. That's really the only place I can foresee. Like if I was to go back to school, I certainly wouldn't major in guitar again. That was a big waste of time. But if I go back to school, I would think about going back to school for AI related stuff, like implementing artificial intelligence to a variety of positions in a corporation. Because let's face it, the big corporations have basically taken over, right? I mean, mom and pop stores are not popping up, right? It's all these big corporate Walmart style takeovers of all these sectors, shipping our jobs overseas physically, shipping our jobs overseas virtually, the influx of illegal immigrants that are able to work on manual labor projects like agriculture, construction, and landscaping, landscaping is a huge thing, especially in Florida, practically year round, right? And so you're in competition with that. And again, there's nothing wrong with a little healthy competition. But at the same time, it's like it's difficult to compete with people who are willing to do just the same work, if not better quality work, for a whole hell of a lot cheaper. You can't compete with that. So it's made it difficult. Anybody that can't see that this country is in a decline and these talking head puppet presidents aren't going to solve anything, no matter which one of them we end up getting stuck with. It is bleak. I try to stay optimistic because, again, we're living through these times of revelation. So there's a lot of people waking up to these truths that are life-changing, and it is, it's encouraging, but it's tough, man. A lot of people are struggling, and I just pray that we're able to get through this. And I pray for change, and I pray for Palestine, man. They've got it pretty rough right now too. So prayers go up for Palestine. Let's get into some NASA news, because that's always funny. Oh no, we can't get into NASA news. That's right. We have to talk about Elon Musk's sexual assault allegations. So this is from September of 2022, and I'm not sure how I missed this, but the quote of this article on RollingStone.com is, or the heading, the title: "How many women were abused to make that Tesla?" 7 women are suing the Elon Musk-led company, alleging sexual harassment. By Stephen Roderick. Corporate culture comes from the top in America. At least that's the Platonic ideal. How a company sets its global image, how it treats its employees, what it values, that all starts in the so-called C-suite. Oh, I'm sitting here yeah, C-suite. I'm sitting here thinking, am I reading an ad? No, okay. So in some companies, that ethos can be found in a single man. They are almost always men who emerge as the face of the firm. Think Steve Jobs at Apple or Jeff Bezos at Amazon. The l'état c'est moi, whatever the hell that means, approach is evident at Tesla. Elon Musk is Tesla, and Tesla is Elon Musk. This has been true since the South African became CEO and wrestled control of the electric car company from its founders in 2008. The board is not forcing Musk's hand. It was Musk who decided Tesla would move its corporate headquarters from California to Texas. At times, he can be so hands-on that he has overnighted at the Fremont, California factory where the cars are manufactured. Musk's tweets can make Tesla's stock rise and fall, and boy, has it fallen. The personal and the corporate are inseparable. This is not in dispute. This past summer was a busy one for Musk. He decided to buy and then decided not to buy Twitter, and then he did end up buying it indeed. He fathered children number 9 and 10 with a female executive at another of his companies. Simultaneously, Musk's father, Errol, admitted to having fathered a second child with his stepdaughter. Ooh, what? My goodness, man. His third child disowned him. He denied concurrently that he broke up the marriage of the co-founder of Google and that he offered to buy a flight attendant a horse in exchange for an erotic massage. What kind of horse? No. The flight attendant received a settlement that was billed to SpaceX. Oh my God, Musk's rocket company. It hasn't been a great year for women at SpaceX either. In December, former SpaceX engineer Ashley Kosak published an essay meticulously detailing the alleged sexual harassment at the company. That was followed by, in June, by a group of SpaceX employees releasing a statement saying Musk's frattish behavior was a frequent source of distraction and embarrassment, asking Musk to stop, being a creep. SpaceX investigated their complaints for 24 hours and then announced that SpaceX had terminated a number of employees involved. but I guess not Musk. On a not unrelated note, Musk continued his long-standing love affair with 69 memes, often tweeting them to his 105 million Twitter followers. This is no accident. Musk has made geek looshness his personal brand and a component of Tesla's marketing strategy. And I would say dork doucheness as well, right? It may have even helped to save his company. By 2016, Tesla had released two models, the S and the X. Both were critically acclaimed and massive hits for the previously tiny electric vehicle market, but not enough to keep a giant company afloat. The next car would make or break Tesla. After building a roadster and an SUV, Tesla's third car was going to be a sensible sedan, but Musk had to make it edgy. His plan was to name the crossover version of the Model Y and the sedan the Model E, completing his SEXY, or sexy, line of cars that he had hinted at in tweets and speeches for years. So, like, what is due to an absolute total perv? I mean, if say SpaceX 10 times fast, and what are you really saying, right? Alas, Ford, the historical home of the Model T, rumbled about trademark infringement and possible litigation. So Musk changed the car's name to the Model 3. The company began selling T-shirts and coffee cups with the logo reading S3XY. Get it? It wasn't just about the car's torque and acceleration. Wordsmiths groaned, but Musk loved it. We just trademarked sexy, boasted Musk in an interview. With increased public demand for electric vehicles and backed by the S3XY sexy campaign, the Model 3 was a mega hit. Since the car was released in July 2017, Tesla has sold 3 million threes, and the company's stock has risen from $62 at the beginning of 2018 to a high of more than $1,200 a share November of 2021. And it was $1,200 in 2021, and now Tesla's sitting at $238. Dude, they lost their ass, boy. They lost their ass. The three, so I guess this article is a bit dated, but hey. The 3 is the best-selling electric vehicle in the world and is as omnipresent in America's affluent neighborhoods as lacrosse sticks. Musk became the richest man in the world, so also at the same time he became the biggest douche in the world too, and continued his frat boy as businessman strategy. He announced in 2020 the sale of a limited number of red satin short shorts with the words S3XY sexy written across the ass, ostensibly tweaking Tesla short sellers who lost billions as the stock rose. Only $69.42, tweeted Musk. He's also big into weed memes. So the 420, they sold out in a minute. Elisa Blickman didn't know any of this in 2021. She just needed work. She had been laid off from her job in Oakland as the pandemic crushed the Bay Area's economy. What Blickman did know was that she was the sole provider for her child, and Tesla was offering $21 an hour with the promise of overtime. Blickman applied online last fall and was quickly hired. A few days later, she made the 50-mile drive from her Pittsburgh apartment to a Marriott near the Fremont plant for an orientation. She alleges that the sketchy vibe began the moment she walked into a conference room. A man in a sexy T-shirt, S3XY, welcomed her and the other new hires. This man soon began talking about the company, telling the new employees that Teslas are so sexy, and these are some sexy cars. Blickman wasn't a Tesla fangirl, so she didn't understand why there was so much talk of sexy at an onboarding session for a global corporation. She says, "I just thought it was very weird," Blickman tells this writer. We're sitting in the deserted pool area of her apartment complex. It's June, but she's in a puffer jacket and occasionally shivers. I wonder whether it was because of the morning chill or talking about her experiences working at Tesla. A year after being hired, Blickman is one of 7 former Tesla workers who have filed sexual harassment lawsuits against Musk's car company in the past 10 months. The women, most of whom were let go from Tesla, allege a level of sexual harassment that paints Tesla as more like one of William Blake's dark, satanic mills than a high-flying Silicon Valley corporation saving the environment. The following story is based on court documents, including those filed on behalf of the women, and Tesla's filings in these cases, as well as interviews with 5 of the women, their friends and co-workers. In these lawsuits and their interviews, the women describe a workplace rife with sexual harassment and a culture of indifference or hostility to their concerns and complaints. And isn't it funny, the treatment that somebody like Russell Brand got compared to the treatment Musk got? Like, I don't remember, and again, I don't really read the news much, but I don't remember hearing about it much or any of this. Do y'all? I don't know, man. I don't remember hearing half of this stuff, really. Anyway, Tesla, which had not had an active public relations department since 2020 at the time of this article, does not typically respond to press inquiries and did not respond to multiple requests for comment for this story. In his court filings in the women's cases, Tesla invoked the arbitration clause in its employment agreement and has denied the women's claims. Quote, Tesla has always and continues to strictly prohibit its employees from engaging in any form of sexual harassment, end quote. Tesla asserts in filings in one of these cases. The company emphasizes that it works to ensure a safe and respectful working environment, backing this up with multiple declarations by employees in various roles. And it cites this, its anti-harassment training and see something, say something, and take charge programs that empower employees to report any issues. And it claims promptly and thoroughly investigates, it claims that it promptly and thoroughly investigates sexual harassment, and if substantiated, takes appropriate disciplinary measures up to and including termination. So basically, Tesla's saying in response, well, these people must be lying. They couldn't have been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed because we have a policy in place that says they shouldn't do that. I mean, that is just absolutely absurd, is it not? When reached by phone, the company Tesla's lead lawyer, Sarah A. Begley of Holland and Knight, acknowledged that she had received Rolling Stone's inquiries and then offered a terse no comment. Tesla didn't answer questions about Musk's sexually charged public persona and how it might trickle down in potentially damaging and unforeseen ways. In Blickman's case, she claims problems started at her onboarding session, so basically from the damn jump. She recalls the man in the S3XY sexy t-shirt starting to read in a monotone about Tesla's various policies. Eventually, he came to the company's policy on sexual harassment. According to Blickman, he played an instructional video. Many of the examples in the video were of women harassing men. She couldn't believe it. She thought, if I'm sexually harassed, they're not going to care, Blickman said. On her first day at work, Blickman alleges she watched a male Tesla worker take photos of a woman's backside as other men watched quietly, as if the man was hunting big game. The photos were soon circulating around the factory. On a break, Blickman says she went up to the woman and asked if she was okay. The woman just shrugged. "I'm used to it," Blickman says the older woman told her. "Shit like that happens all the time here." At first, Blickman says she kept her mouth shut. Almost every day, she alleges, she heard the male workers in the factory sizing up women. "Oh, I'd do her. Oh, I'd F her. Her ass is a 10. She had spent many years working in a predominantly male world as a delivery driver, and she knew how to maneuver around a bad seat or two. The problem at Tesla, she says, was there were just too many bad seeds everywhere." A few weeks into her time at Tesla, she alleges that a male worker inched into her workspace and began intentionally touching her with his arm and then his leg. The man walked up to Blickman on a break and smiled. "You're a pretty little white girl." And I'm surprised he didn't say, "You got a pretty mouth," right? She also alleges the man lied and told her he was a lead, aka a supervisor, which dissuaded her from complaining about him. On another occasion, she says she told the man to back off. She claims the man told a couple of coworkers that he wanted to kill her and another employee. Eventually, management moved him to a different part of the factory, but Blickman still had to see him on a regular basis. Blickman tried to focus on her work, but says that she remained afraid of this dude. Quote, "It's awkward and I'm not an idiot," Blickman tells this journalist. "I've just started. What's it going to look like if I say I'm being sexually harassed right away at a new job?" Blickman began commuting with another worker, Jessica Brooks, one of the 7 women who have filed suit against Tesla. She claims she eventually began piling boxes around her workstation so Tesla workers couldn't gawk at her body, and confirms Blickman's story. Dudes can be such creeps, though, can't they? Brooks and Blickman, and really, like, if it's that bad, you should definitely say something, right? I mean, unless you secretly enjoy it, why wouldn't you tell a supervisor? Unless, well, wait a minute, didn't they say his supervisor's doing it? Dude, I'd hate to be a chick. I really would, man. It must suck to be a chick for real, because dudes can be just absolute fucking creeps. I'm sorry to say. Grow up, dudes. Brooks and Blickman talk about how all the cat calls and the awful behavior made them want to call in sick. Daily, they both allege they heard men talk about female employees, debating which ones were doable. Blickman claims she heard one male worker shout about another woman employee. "I'd like to bend her over and spread her cheeks," he said. I mean, this is just dudes in a warehouse. I mean, when you work with dudes, eventually you're going to work with creeps. I'm sorry to say. I don't think that's necessarily Tesla's fault, but the fact that they're so blah about it at work does say something about the policies, I think. But then again, realistically, when you're working in a warehouse, which I have worked in warehouses before, just not in manufacturing. I've worked in shipping. But you're going to deal with all sorts, I promise. Another man blurted out his sexual preferences, quote, "I like to spit on a girl's face when I'm blanking her." God, what awful things to put in an article, really. What awful things to say at work in front of a lady. Like, these dudes really don't have class if it's true. Get a little class, dudes. Come on, man. Blick's supervisor wouldn't help because she alleges he was one of the worst offenders. Well, there you go. So if you can't tell your supervisor, you go above his perverted ass head. I'm sorry. So the supervisor was one of the worst offenders. Each day, she claims, he approached her from behind and gave her an unwanted massage on her lower back. Oh, dude. You should have bit his freaking nose off, girl. Blickman just gritted her teeth under her COVID mask and waited for it to be over. I mean, why wouldn't you tell him to stop? You got to tell him to stop. If you don't tell a dude to stop immediately, he's going to think you like it. That's just how creep dudes are. Dudes can be creeps, man. I'm sorry to say, there really are a lot of freaking weirdos out there, man. And if what she's saying is true, I feel terrible about someone going through that at work. If it's unwanted, though, you've got to stomp on that motherfucker's toe and hit him in the face. Honestly, you'd have every right to just jack that motherfucker up, dude, for real. Or tell another dude that you do trust to get that motherfucker to stop. Or really, you've got to go over his head. That just makes me feel sick, man. In another one of the women's lawsuits, Tesla filed a sworn statement from a female worker who allegedly worked close to Blickman and Brooks, saying that she didn't hear or see any sexual harassment at the factory, and multiple other Tesla employees submitted declarations along the same lines, insisting that if they had, they would have reported it. So basically, it smells like some shills, right? It sounds like some shills. I wonder if they called the girls crazy too, right? Tesla requires its workers to do a few minutes of stretching every morning before their shift. That's kind of a weird policy, isn't it? To make them do stretching? I mean, you can suggest it, but they require it. What if you do your calisthenics and stretching at home? That's weird, dude. Do y'all think that's weird that Tesla would require its workers? I mean, I guess in theory, it's kind of a good idea, but you can really just suggest that kind of thing, can't you? I mean, what? I guess it would prevent accidents, wouldn't it? That's freaking weird, though, man. A few minutes of stretching every morning before their shift. One day, and you know, it just makes you wonder, I wonder if it was Elon Musk who came up with that policy, right? I don't know if it was. And I don't know if you could ever possibly find that out. But wouldn't that be weird if that was his idea? It kind of gives me even more of the creeps, right? More so than Elon ever did before, for sure. A few minutes before their shift. Blickman alleges her supervisor came up behind her and whispered in her ear. Oh, God, unwanted like that. That is sick. He said to her, "I hear you don't like to scream loud enough." Ew. Blickman says she broke for a moment and turned toward her supervisor and said, "What?" The man backed away and rephrased his statement, she claims. Quote, "I hear you don't like to scream teamwork loud enough." Later, that supervisor was transferred to a different part of the factory. His parting gift? Well, according to Blickman, he told his replacement that she was not a valuable team member and suggested she be exiled to a harder job outside in the tents, one of the factory's least desirable areas to work. Outside of work, Blickman says she ran into a female Tesla worker. They talked a bit, and Blickman confided to her that she was a lesbian. Blickman says the women then aggressively came on to her, but Blickman told her she wasn't interested in going on a date. The women grew angry, and Blickman alleges she outed her to the rest of her Tesla workers. Blickman says this resulted in a new wave of harassment. The woman who outed her would, Blickman claims, get her attention by making thrusting motions. She says the woman followed her into the bathroom and dropped to the ground and looked under the stalls for her. Blickman says Tesla's HR was less than useless. From a statement issued by Tesla and from its filing in the woman's cases, the company claims it later amped up some of its sexual harassment training and processes. So what, they trained people how to sexually harass better, or what are they saying by that? Probably mean that they trained people to sexually harass better, right? Blickman says she did not find one male worker who was sympathetic to her. He'd listen as she detailed her complaints. He was definitely not a pig, remembers Blickman, but he was only one in a sea of pigs. There were just too many in there. End quote. That's crazy, man. And so here's the thing, just as a sort of side note, in a corporate structure, if you get like a perverted sort of psychopathic type high up or like at the highest level, they will tend to elevate similar minded people. So perverted psychopaths. And one thing that is sort of unique about creeps and weirdos and psychopaths is they can pick each other out. They can pick out victims very accurately, even by it's weird. So they did a study on one of those serial killers. I could tell you which one, but I don't want to get it wrong. So it was just a well-known serial killer. And they were doing some kind of psychological study, and they played a video of a bunch of people just walking by the camera, crowds of people walking by the camera, but it only showed from the waist down. And it was Bundy, I believe. I want to say it was Bundy, okay? But they asked him to pick out, just based on the gait of these people's walk, which ones would be good victims, okay? Because I guess Bundy had made claims that he could smell a good victim or something along those lines. And what they found in this study was that he would pick out, just by that gait, with a very high accuracy, people that had a history of being abused or like in abusive relationships or sexually abused. So it was like uncanny. And so where I'm going with that, though, is if you get somebody like that, so let's say hypothetically Ted Bundy were to be running Tesla, he could promote and send people up the corporate ladder that were creeps and weirdos and psychopaths too. And they tend to stick together, right? Birds of a feather, as they say, right? So anyways, the months passed, and Blickman found it increasingly difficult to drag her body out of bed at 4:30 a.m. and then make the 90-minute commute to her 12-hour shift. That makes a long day. I did exactly something like that to a T when I was in Florida years ago. So it was 12-hour shifts Monday through Thursday and then 8 on Friday. And then we would usually get the weekends off. But it was an hour and a half commute each way, at least. So it's, 3 hours commuting total each day and a 12-hour shift, 15-hour day. You can't do nothing but work. And if you hate your job and you're doing those kind of hours that far away from home, you're going to burn yourself out, kid. Your sanity and your health is worth more than any paycheck, honestly. She was drinking and smoking too much. Every break, she had an urge to just bolt the factory. Blickman tells this journalist that in the fall of 2021, she asked to be transferred to one of Tesla's service centers. There was a problem with her paperwork. She doesn't know if this was done on purpose or was just incompetence of the higher ups at Tesla. In October, Blickman took COVID leave. She emailed Tesla Human Resources while away and told them she needed to take stress leave as well. She detailed some of the harassment that she claims that she and others had suffered. HR replied about meeting in person, but then Blickman says she didn't hear anything else, so she didn't go back to the factory. She was then fired when she didn't return to work after getting a letter from Tesla in November saying that the company policy might result in the termination of employees if they didn't come to work for 2 days in a row without notification. After remaining stoic through most of our conversation, Blickman's eyes filled with tears. Quote, I was just looking for a place where I could work and not be bothered, not be harassed. Is that too much to ask? I asked her if she thought, or this author asked her if she thought Musk's slavish devotion to frat boy humor contributed in any way to Tesla workers saying just whatever the fuck they wanted to women. And she said, well, of course, there are people in that factory who see him as a god. If he talks like that, they know they can too. Wow. So he's just an absolute creep, isn't he? There's no evidence suggesting that Musk knew about these alleged harassment cases going on at Tesla's Fremont factory before the women filed their lawsuits. But for a guy who claims to be so hands-on at all levels, it's hard to imagine he wouldn't have picked up on some of these complaints about the allegedly pervasive culture. And if he didn't know, why didn't he know? There's a community coming to life on the once desolate land adjacent to Tesla's Fremont factory. For years, the Warm Springs neighborhood was a dreary industrial area that had become a haven for folks dumping trash and junking cars while participating in other unsavory activities. Now there's a new elementary school, the first one built in Fremont in 25 years. It's just a 15-minute walk on freshly paved sidewalks to a recently opened Bay Area rapid transit stop connecting the blue-collar town to San Francisco. The boulevards are wide and the charging stations are plentiful. Townhouses at the corner of Innovation Way and Synergy Street are going for $1.4 million for a damn townhouse. That is fucking crazy. Currently, Fremont produces more than half of the Teslas in the world. The factory is on the grounds of a former General Motors plant that was bought by Tesla for $42 million in 2010. Just 12 years later, Fremont has become the most productive auto plant in the country. I would say probably one of the only auto plants in the country. Building almost 8,500 environmentally friendly electric cars every week in 2021. The numbers are trumpeted as further signs of Musk's genius. However, Tesla isn't a stranger to litigation about its work culture. In 2021, a jury held the company liable in a racial discrimination suit filed by a black worker who alleged the use of the N-word was common at the factory and that racial slurs were scrawled across the walls. Tesla disputed the judge's finding after the verdict and assured its employees that the facts didn't justify the jury's verdict. This past spring, 15 Tesla workers filed a suit against the company, alleging that black workers were often greeted by white bosses with comments of, "Welcome to the plantation?" The suit also alleges that black workers were given the most daunting physical assignments. Quote, "Race plays no role in any of Tesla's work assignments, promotions, pay, or discipline," lawyers for the company said in a statement. "Tesla prohibits discrimination in any form," end quote. This followed a February lawsuit filed by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing against Tesla for racial discrimination and harassment at the Fremont plant. In a statement, Tesla called the lawsuit misguided and denied the allegations, dubbing the proceedings unfair, counterproductive, especially because the allegations focus on events from years ago. Tesla's defenders would argue that every large company will at times face lawsuits, human resources challenges, and disgruntled employees. However, Tesla seems to be an extreme case both in the quantity of legal actions brought in quick succession and the consistent nature of the allegations. And most companies don't have a rule-defying leader like Musk, what with his tweets floating the idea for a new school whose acronym just so happens to spell out tits. I'm thinking of starting a new university, Texas Institute of Technology and Science. It will have epic merch. The women's legal findings detailed alleged incidents ranging from being asked for hand jobs to being stalked by drunk on-the-job employees in the parking lot. While the cases make their way through the system and Tesla pushes back against the allegations, as of course they would, the fallout has been catastrophic for the women, and I would argue catastrophic for Tesla's stock prices as well. One couldn't leave her bedroom for weeks. Some feel so ashamed, a common reaction among sexually harassed victims. And many are having trouble jump-starting their careers after their time at Tesla left a black hole on their resumes to boot. The women tell Rolling Stone they can't understand why the kind of behavior they claim they experienced was and still possibly is being tolerated by Tesla and Musk. They believe Musk should be held accountable because, again, corporations can't be held accountable, can they? Corporations have all the rights of a person, legally speaking, but you can't put a corporation in jail for sexual harassment. The never modest Musk, say that 10 times fast, the never modest Musk recently proclaimed that he would jack up Fremont's production by 50% in the near future. That means more jobs. Musk is offering something to workers who could never buy a $60,000 entry-level Tesla, much less $1 million home. A $21 per hour wage. This manna for blue-collar workers in America, where most of the factory jobs that used to support manual labor have been shipped overseas or down to Mexico. Men and women from economically distressed towns like Antioch, Stockton, and Modesto talk excitedly about doubling their take-home pay. Yes, 90-minute commutes each way, exponentially longer if you're relying on public transportation, are a nightmare. And yes, you are standing on your feet for 12-hour shifts in a non-union shop where you can be fired without any cause. And yes, there was a killing in the parking lot a few Decembers back when one worker allegedly laid in wait for another worker and gunned him down. Still, there is optimism in the air. Even the women bringing the lawsuits tell this author that they had been excited about working at a place with cool technology that was making our air a little better. Sure, they're not. Then they say reality sets in. Elise Brown thought that if she covered her body head to toe in oversized clothing, she might then be left alone. It was November 2020, and most of the Bay Area economy was still in COVID shutdown. She was 21 and had a 3-month-old son, and her partner was out of work. Brown didn't hesitate when a recruitment agency offered her a job casting metal parts for Tesla. She tells Rolling Stone she had heard from a female cousin who had worked at Tesla that it was a tough place for a woman to work. Brown says she thought they were being overly dramatic, right? According to Brown, she kissed her baby goodbye a few days later and left for work at 4:30 a.m. At 6 a.m., she clocked in and learned her station wasn't in the factory, but outside in an area commonly known as the tents, where she would be dunking metal parts into a hot chemical liquid to prepare them for shaping. She was given work gloves to protect her hands from the toxic liquids, but tells the author she soon noticed other workers had burns on their forearms where the gloves ended. She was then required to grind the pieces into shape with a tool. She says she also soon learned that there were other dangers. First, there were catcalls from the male workers. Her court filing detailed some of them. So these are all quotes from people working in the tents out there. She would have to hear, "Are you single?" She would say, "No, I have a partner and a baby." Brown alleges the men would just laugh at her. "Whatever man you're with doesn't care about you because you're working here." Tesla filings include a sworn statement from one of Brown's supervisors claiming that he had not seen or heard any sexual harassment targeting Brown. Well, of course not. Brown tells this writer that she informed her Tesla supervisors that she was breastfeeding and would need to pump during her 12-hour shift. She says that information spread throughout the department. This quickly became a subject of sport with her coworkers, particularly one male worker who became obsessed with her. He started making comments about her breastfeeding, often referring to her as a cow or saying that she was milking. She says that when her breast milk leaked and stained her shirt, he would say things like, "Oh, I see you're milking today." According to her complaint, the man would spend most of the workday bothering her, following her around, and he was always talking, she claims. "Well, you're looking hella thick today." And could you imagine like having to work someplace like Tesla where your supervisor's treating you like this? I mean, that's just absolute nonsense. And, you know, if it's true, it's definitely a reflection on the higher-ups, is it not? Brown decided to do what she could to deter the unwanted attention. That's when she bought an extra large mechanic's jumpsuit to envelop her entire body and started wearing a wool hat to cover her hair and a big scarf for making her neck invisible. Other than her face, hardly an inch of her skin was exposed. Probably not a bad idea working out there in the tents with all those chemicals and stuff, right? Makes sense. She said, "I just wanted to blend in and somehow disappear." Brown told this author at a Starbucks not far from her apartment. She's wearing a jaunty straw hat and has an easy smile, but her fists keep clenching in anger. She said, "I just wanted to do my job and go home. They wouldn't let me." After a month or so, she says, she went to her male supervisor and complained about the creepy coworker. She said, "He's saying very inappropriate comments to me. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Can you do something or say something to him?" According to Brown's court filing, her supervisor, who she claims frequently looked her body up and down, brushed it off in a filing by the supervisor. In another one of the cases, he claims none of the employees he supervised ever complained to him about other employees using harassing language, and that he would have escalated any such complaints to human resources. Things somehow got worse. The Tesla factory is immense, with 10,000 employees. Besides lunch, workers receive 2 15-minute breaks during a 12-hour shift. Brown, and that doesn't sound right. Honestly, I think they're supposed to get more breaks than that unless lunch is an hour. On a 12-hour shift, I mean, I could be wrong, but that seems light on the breaks anyway. I know on an 8-hour shift, you're supposed to get 2 15s and a lunch. So at 12, shouldn't you get 3 15s and a lunch? I can't remember. Brown would have to walk quickly just to reach a toilet and get back in time. Brown alleges the coworker followed her to the bathroom. She says she begged him to stop harassing her, and he just laughed and went back to his crude talk. Brown also alleges she went to her supervisor and asked him to move her to a different part of the factory, but she claims the man soon moved there too and continued harassing her. In my heart, I wanted to strangle this motherfucker, she says, like with both hands and feet, but I knew I had a baby and I'd go to jail, so I couldn't do anything. Brown says he wasn't the only man to bother her and alleges that she pleaded with her coworkers to knock it off. "We're not at a party, you motherfuckers. We're here to work," Brown says she told the men. "I'm not here to flirt with you. I need this job. Please leave me alone." Brown tells this writer a story that is also in her court filing. There was another male worker who reeked of booze and began asking her personal questions about her life and what she liked in a man. One night, she finished her shift before dawn. The Tesla factory runs 24/7, and started making her way to her car in the vast parking lot. The lot wasn't a picnic in the best of times. This is where the worker allegedly shot another employee. That night was worse, Brown says. She heard this drunken man shouting for her to give him a ride home. He staggered after her. Brown started running in a jagged pattern trying to lose him, but the task was made harder because she was wearing so many layers of clothes. She eventually lost the man and slipped into her car. She let out a scream of rage before driving home. She says, "I grew up in Oakland and I know how to avoid people on drugs or drinking, but I didn't think I'd have to do it at work. It was COVID. I needed the money for my baby," she said. She brought the workplace home and would yell at her partner to not touch or not comfort her. He suggested that she just quit, and Brown snapped back that they needed the money. So she kept going to work at Tesla. About 2 months later, Brown went to work and found out her badge would not let her in. She called a coworker who asked a supervisor about it, and they reported back to Brown that her contract had been terminated. And the reason why? She says Tesla argued that she had been away from her workstation too much. She was crushed. So what a way to fire somebody, man. Like, just don't even let you in one day, don't bother calling or telling you in person. This is one hell of a long article. Throw some thumbs up in the chat if you want me to try to keep going with this article, people. But wow, I didn't realize how long this was. Mello says that's her story. Yeah. Make it stop. So that was 18 months before that article was written. Since then, Brown says that she has battled anxiety and gets nervous about leaving her house to run routine errands. She now has a job in San Francisco hair salon, but she says she has trouble riding the BART train to work. "I can't handle any more sitting behind me or handle anyone sitting behind me or getting on and sitting next to me," Brown says. "I'm working it out." So it bothered her that much. I mean, I really hate to be a chick, man. Just getting hit on by creeps all the time. She says fear and depression, anger. She says, "I'd drive that Tesla down to the factory and I'd burn it down." So there's more. Eden Maduros didn't like to fight traffic, so she spent 14 hours a day working at the Centinelina Tesla Service Center in suburban LA. More allegations from her. So it seems like it's, and I'm not going to keep reading all of this. It seems like it's systematic disrespect and acceptance of sexual harassment in that workplace, which is awful. Like, that's terrible, man. And, I've worked on construction sites. Dudes can be pigs, but honestly, if you have to work alongside of women, you're supposed to show respect. Like, dudes can be such pigs, man. I'm sorry. Grow up, dudes, yet again. So these are just more sexual assault allegations from more employees at a different location. Medeiros tried to transfer to another service center. Her supervisor slow walked it for months, so dragged his feet. And I wonder if she eventually got fired. Her supervisor was screaming at her. Yeah, so again, these are stories, and I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt unless it jumps out at me like certain things are lies, but it seems legitimate to me. There's another one, Berenza. So basically, this whole article boils down to where the hell is Musk's role in all this, right? Yeah. So let's just move away from Tesla and Musk for a minute. There was one thing in NASA news that I wanted to share with you guys because that's always funny, isn't it? NASA news. It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Because how can it be news if it doesn't exist, right? How can it be news if it doesn't exist, NASA? Space news. This is kind of funny too. If my computer would ever load up the other tab I'm trying to switch to. But basically, NASA is claiming to use 2 worlds for practicing with their space helicopters. Absolute nonsense. Frosticular nug. I don't get it. We're wasting time. Only women call them creeps when they're not turned on by them. Otherwise, it's open season for her. Well, I mean, that's kind of the point though, right? Like, if she wanted him to touch her, then she would be into it and let him. But you can't just do that at work because you're someone's supervisor. If she tells you to stop, you shouldn't do that, man. Like, of course that's the case. If she don't want you touching her, then you got no business touching her. If she's cool with it, then whatever. But I still would argue that you probably shouldn't be doing that at work, especially when it's like you're her supervisor. It's just kind of doesn't really belong there. I mean, I've worked at the same place with my wife at the same time, and we never would do public displays of affection at work. Okay. Plain Truther says in its preface, the man who will establish a colony on Mars will be named Elon. Surely a coincidence, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how these things, and what about the whole Baron von Trump, right? With with the picture that looks just like Trump's son from 100 and something years ago, whatever, the adventures of Baron von Trump. Okay, so mars.nasa.gov says NASA uses 2 worlds to test the future Mars helicopter designs. These motherfuckers are just out of their minds completely. For the first time in history, 2 planets have been home to testing future aircraft designs. On this world, a new rotor that could be used with next generation Mars helicopter was recently tested at NASA's JPL, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern Cal, spinning at near supersonic speeds 0.95 Mach. Meanwhile, the agency's Ingenuity Mars helicopter has achieved new altitude and airspeed records on the red planet in the name of experimental flight testing. Sure you did, NASA. Sure you did. We believe that you're testing helicopters on Mars, NASA. And isn't it funny how NASA has been supposedly sending these little rovers and helicopters and satellites to these distant planets, millions and millions of miles away. And yet the fake pictures that we get from, like, say, Pioneer 10's images of Jupiter look exactly like 1970s fakery you would expect. And now that we live in the digital age with high resolution deep fake technology, the fake stuff that we get from distant planets is much crisper and CGI style fakery, right? Just as you'd expect. NASA says, quote, "Our next generation Mars helicopter testing has literally had the best of both worlds," end quote, said Teddy Zanitos, Ingenuity's project manager and manager for Mars sample recovery helicopters. Here on Earth, you have all the instrumentation and hands-on immediacy you could hope for while testing new aircraft components. On Mars, you have the real off-world conditions you could never truly recreate here on Earth. That includes a whisper-thin atmosphere and significantly less gravity than on Earth. So isn't that interesting, though? Because, frankly, I would love to know, like, what kind of data feedback these people that claim to be flying or controlling these helicopters, like, what are they looking at? Are they looking at like a computer screen? Do they have an Xbox controller? What does it look like? What are they doing exactly, you know, for our tax dollars that we're just shoveling at them? The next generation carbon fiber rotor blades being tested on Earth are almost 4 inches longer than Ingenuity's, with greater strength and a different design. NASA thinks these blades could enable bigger, more capable Mars helicopters. The challenge is, as the blade tips approach supersonic speeds, vibration causing turbulence can quickly get out of hand. So, while Elon Musk's SpaceX can't even seem to launch a fucking rocket successfully because they keep blowing up, meanwhile, NASA's just, remote controlling rovers and helicopters on Mars as we speak, right? They're so absolutely full of it, you guys. I mean, let's face it. The concept of Mars being this terra firma sphere flying around in space is wholly contingent and 100% pre-requires spinning ball Earth and infinite space. Now that we've shown and demonstrated and proven that Earth doesn't have the necessary curvature to result in an overall sphere measurably, and damn it, the Earth is stationary, it's not spinning or orbiting at all, then, you know, the concept of Mars being anything more than just a light in the sky goes right out the window. Mars could not be a terra firma sphere in space. Mars is merely a wandering star, and nobody's going there. So NASA is necessarily lying. And of course, you know, I believe that whoever's remote controlling these distant helicopters probably believes that they are doing that. They're probably just as deceived as everybody else. So you can't blame them for going after these high-paying jobs at NASA where they don't really have to do anything. They just pretend to remote control cars and helicopters on Mars for probably millions of dollars a year. It must be nice. To find a space big enough to create a Martian atmosphere here on Earth, engineers looked to JPL's 25-foot wide, 85-foot tall space simulator, a place where Surveyor, Voyager, and Cassini got their first taste of space-like environments. For 3 weeks in September, a team monitored sensors, meters, and cameras as the blades endured run after run at ever higher speeds and greater pitch angles. So they're talking about this alleged space recreator where it's more or less like a vacuum chamber. What's so funny about that is they won't put astronauts in those things in their spacesuits. The few times that they've tried to do that, like, it starts boiling their blood and like the spit on their tongue will start to boil and then they pass out because the human body can't live in a vacuum. And so the spacesuits that they claim keep the lying Freemasons alive when they're up there doing spacewalks can't even, stand up to a mere vacuum chamber here on Earth, which is nowhere near as powerful as the alleged vacuum of space is claimed to be. So it really does expose them. Everything they do exposes them as liars, man. They are such terrible liars. They said, we spun our blades up to 3,500 RPMs, which is 750 revolutions per minute faster than the Ingenuity blades have gone. Really? Said Tyler Del Sesto, sample recovery helicopter deputy test conductor at JPL. So that is his actual title. His title at, JPL? Yeah, his title at JPL, Tyler Del Sesto, is Sample Recovery Helicopter Deputy Test Conductor. So his one and only function at JPL is what we just said, these stupid frickin' helicopters. Wow, man. I wonder if JPL makes its money from tax dollars. Like, are we paying for JPL with our tax dollars too? Or are they private? I don't know. I would look it up, but hell with that. I'm not trying to spend 10 minutes looking that up. It's not that important. But I'm pretty sure at least some chunk of their money comes from tax dollars. And is JPL a publicly traded company? I wonder. Let's just see. I've got to find this out real fast. Come on, baby. And if anybody knows, shout it on out in the chat if JPL is publicly traded. Is JPL publicly traded on stock exchange? I wonder. Come on, baby. Yeah. Don't you love a slow computer? They live sunglasses. It is. Everyone gets our money but us. I know, right, Mello? Please tell. Ooh. Oh, and by the way, it says here, Musk was accused of exposing his erect thangalang to her, rubbing her leg without consent, and offering to buy her a horse in exchange for erotic massage. So all that article about all those other employees, that wasn't even what I was really trying to read. But doesn't it appear that that like sexual harassment and sexual assault is just rampant and systemic at Tesla? No wonder their stock prices have absolutely crashed since 2020. I'm telling you, Elon Musk, bro, you got to come clean. Come out as a flat earther and tell the world the truth, brother. It's the only way you're ever going to have a chance to redeem yourself. Yeah, Al Hyde, Elon Musk was born a female, you say. Honestly, I'm not going to argue with you there. He definitely checks all the boxes of an FTM transgender. And nothing against that other than the fact that he appears to be hiding that, or she appears to be hiding that from the world and is deceiving people. I mean, anybody can really do whatever they want with their bodies, but to deceive people into insidious, deceptions, I don't know, man. I just personally tend to disagree with that sort of thing. Okay. And so that whole thing I tried to do is gone. All right, let's try it again. What was I looking for, you folks? Oh yeah, is JPL publicly traded on stock exchange? Looks like it is publicly traded. Okay, managed by Caltech. Oh, I didn't know that. Did y'all know that JPL was managed by Caltech? That's the university, is it not? JPL, managed by Caltech, is NASA's only federally funded research and development center. Designed, built, and operated, the United States' first satellite, Explorer 1, launched in 1958. Okay, so they are federally funded, which means we pay for it with our tax dollars. That's all that means, because the federal government doesn't produce any money. They borrow it from the federal, non-federal, non-reserve bank, don't they? But yeah, I thought it was funny that these vacuum chambers, where they supposedly recreate the Martian atmosphere here on Earth, in their 25-foot wide, 85-foot tall space simulator. Why don't they just put some astronauts in there with their full regalia and full spacesuits and just see how long they last in there? Because they're lying about being in space. Those goofy suits that they designed to trick us into thinking they're up there flying around in space wouldn't keep anyone alive more than a minute or two in the allegedly strong vacuum of space they claim is up there, right? There was another NASA article that I wanted to touch on about the 10 million mile distant laser beam shot, but I'll probably save that one for another day because I've already gone almost 2 hours. Wow, you guys, sometimes y'all got to stop me at some point. But just to recap, man, what the hell is Elon Musk doing? What is up with this guy? So to summarize, not only is he extremely creepy, so like rapey, creepy, but he's also no genius, clearly. In many areas, he may be genius level on certain things, and on certain things, it appears that he is rather stupid, okay? If you haven't seen him on Saturday Night Live from, 2020 or 2021, don't watch it unless you want to have nightmares of the cringiest thing you've ever seen in your life. Since he's done those rounds, the stock prices of SpaceX, Tesla, and PayPal, or at least PayPal and Tesla, have plummeted. And so Elon Musk is losing his ass. I mean, he's going to be fine. He's a multi-billionaire. But how does someone so idiotic become so incredibly wealthy? Like, I don't know, man. It almost makes you think that the number of dollars in a person's account isn't the only metric of a person's worth, right? Because juxtapose Elon's bank account with what a apparently slimy and goofy and idiotic person he is. Doesn't compute, doesn't jive as far as I can tell. But anyways, yeah, man. So that covers the things I wanted to talk about. I hope y'all had a good, happy Thanksgiving. Mello says, like what he says, but don't trust him. The front man for the hidden hand. Yeah, Stan, agreed. Yeah, man. So we'll wrap this one up, you guys. Hopefully I'll be able to keep my little hotel room another week until the 1st. And hopefully I'll be out of here by the 1st, God willing. Say a prayer up for me. Because we've got this camper trailer that I need to pay off, and it needs some work. And if I can get that done and ready to move in, then we'll have a place to go, and I'll have to find somewhere to put it and get it there. But honestly, I don't know how that's all going to work, how that's going to look, but I've got faith, and I'm trying to stay optimistic. But if you want to help us out, we could sure use your support. PayPal, Patreon, Venmo, Cash App, links will be down below. Appreciate you in advance. Thanks so much. And more content coming on the way. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Y'all be good, or be good at it. Bye.